All right, today we are going to talk about everything going on right here. All right, guys, so pretty big update on Turbo Streetcar. Obviously, it is solid axle time. So this is something I've always wanted to do as long as I've had this car. I've always wanted to look into doing a solid axle. I'd always thought it'd be really cool. And basically how this started is that a couple towns over, there's a retired airfield and they started doing no prep events there. And so I took a ride out there, put some pictures over here, and I was on a 15x8 wheel with a 28x9 slick. And I feel like I did pretty good. I think my best time was somewhere in the 670s at a 170 60 foot. I'll throw the slip right there. So I was pretty happy with that, considering, you know, the IRS that's in this car was completely stock other than some polyurethane bushings. You know, I had the subframe bushings here, and I did the control arm subframe bushings also. But other than that, as far as the chassis and the body on this car, is pretty much completely stock. Going to that event kind of really reinvigorated me to try to do this project. Being that it's winter, I ended up pulling the subframe out, and I just wanted to see what this housing would look like under here and kind of get an idea of how much clearance there would be for, you know, control arms and whatever else needed to be under here. So I was pretty happy when I saw that there's a pretty good amount of space, and it seems as though it wouldn't be terribly difficult to come up with, you know, bracketry to get this thing in here. So I kind of got a little excited, and, you know, I had to make a little modification here because the 28x9 slick worked on the 15x8 inch wheel, but it's just not enough. I wasn't really able to put all the power into the car until, you know, halfway to 3/4 of the way down the strip. So really, I'm making room for those bad Johnnies. This is a 28x10.5 slick, and it's on a 15x10 wheel, and that was just not going to be fun to try to fit into this stock wheel well. So if I show you this piece right here, this is the part of the wheel well that I cut out. So this goes in the car like that, and it fits into the front here. And if I spin this around, you can see that there was a lot of rubbing going on here, and I'm pretty sure that this is from my drag radials. They would always constantly rub if I ever came out of like a parking lot. And then I think this is from the slicks. When the car squat, it would hit right here. I'm fairly confident that's the difference between these two marks. So that on a 9-inch slick being a problem, then the 10.5 is definitely going to be a problem. So this video, I just kind of want to catch you guys up to what I've done. Obviously, I cut some wheel well out. What I did as far as solid axle is I had to lay some things out on the floor. So what I ended up doing was I dropped a plumb bob off the crankshaft on either side of the crankshaft and made marks on the floor. And then I measured between them, got the halfway distance, and you probably can't see it in this video, but right about there, I put a nail in the floor, and that's the center of the front of the chassis. So then I came back to the rear, and I dropped the plumb bob off these pinch welds in the back. So I dropped the plumb bob down here on this side and down over on that side over there. And then I measured between them, found the halfway point, and that gave me 2 centered points under the car. So then I took a chalk line and I put it on the nail up front, and I pulled it all the way back, all the way to the rear of the car, right over that center point. And I snapped the chalk line, and that gave me a center line of the car. So the complete, perfectly center of the chassis is now marked on the floor. So then what I did was I measured from the center line, I measured out 20 inches to about here, and I did the same thing on that side. And then I took a tape measure and I hooked it on that nail, and I brought it back so that the tape measure ran over this point over here. And I measured how long it is from that nail to this point. And then I did the same thing on that side. And once I got those measurements equal, then I knew I had a perfectly perpendicular line to the center line of the vehicle. So this is basically my starting point for how everything is going to get laid out in the back over here. So once I had that line this way, now I can start laying out everything else. So I haven't really gotten super far into that, but I have come up with a design of how I'm going to do the 4-link. You know, the conventional way would be a parallel 4-link where the lower link and the upper link are right in line. They are in the same plane. Obviously the upper link would have a little more downward angle, but forward to back they would be parallel. But what I'm going to end up doing is like the Fox body Mustangs, where they have a triangulated 4-link that would have a bar that comes from the inside of the frame rail and then goes in towards the center of the housing. The reason I'm going that direction is because the parallel 4-link has nothing that holds the housing from moving side to side, so you have to run like a wishbone or a diagonal link from the front bracket to the rear bracket on the housing. And then I don't really like the diagonal link. Pretty much the bolt head is the only thing that holds a diagonal link on, and there's a lot of twisting force on that bracket. And if that bracket were to break or that bolt head were to snap off or be sheared off, you know, the rear end can then just move however it wants. This is a street car. It will always be a street car. It's driven on the street. Obviously 3,000 horsepower cars survive with wishbones and diagonal links, but I feel like on the street it's going to be abused pretty hard, hitting potholes and, you know, dips in the road and things like that. So I just don't like the idea of it. So the Fox body style suspension with the triangulated upper bars, now there's 4 heim joints that are going to be holding the rear, and all of the links are double shear. So it would literally have to completely shear a bolt off, and I don't think that that's really going to happen, or it's a lot less likely. So that's the idea with the solid axle. So now I guess I'll show you what I did in here and why I did some of the things that I've done. So let's jump in the car. So if we look inside here, obviously I got a whole pile of stuff out, and you know, again, this is a street car, so all of this stuff has to go back in here. The seat bottom, the seat backs, the inner panels here, all has to go in. So this got cut out because of where that tire was rubbing on that panel over there. So the challenge with this and wanting to put everything back in is that there's these brackets. So these brackets are what hold the seat back, and that's what allows it to fold down. And if I show you on this inner fender, here's the bracket for the outer part of the seat, and you'll see it's on this boss, and that boss sticks out about 1 inch, and then this bracket sticks out about 1 inch. So between the two of them, there's about 2 inches you can come out before you really get into this pivot point. So I'm really hoping that what I can do is I can have this come out just enough where I can take this bracket and then just weld it back onto the sheet metal over here, and then I can still have the seat fold down and all that functionality. So the place where it actually clips in is right here, and if you look at this like directly from the front, like that plane comes down right about to here. So the fender well can definitely come out, and I can cut these brackets down and get them right back in there. So that's the plan as far as the fender well. Now that I have this cut out, I can kind of show you what the tire is going to look like from the outside. So I am going to grab that tire and I'm going to throw it in the wheel well and then show you guys what that looks like. All right, so I got the tire in there, and man, check that out. So that tire is probably tucked up a little bit more and maybe in a little bit more than it will be at ride height when this is all done. But if we come around to the inside now you can see that there is plenty of room on the inside of that tire for that tire to fit in there. So that came out perfect. That came out exactly how I want it to be. And there is even room between the tire and the coilover. There's probably about 2 inches there. So cutting that fender well out should have this tire fitting in there perfect. And then once I get the rest of the suspension cleaned up, it should sit something like this. I don't know if it's going to be exactly like that. Like I said, I think it's a little bit high right now, and it's probably in a little far. It might come out maybe a 1/2 inch, something like that, because if you look down the fender, it is tucked in there a little bit. But other than that, that's pretty much where it's going to be. So now what I want to do is I want to jump into my computer. I've been modeling some stuff in CAD. I did some pretty cool stuff. One of the things that I did was I actually 3D scanned the entire floor from about here all the way back and up and over the differential. So I can actually overlay that onto my CAD where all the bracketry is, so I can actually see where that's all going to fit. So now the lower links, the bracketry for the lower links is going to mount pretty much right on these subframe, the thick section of the subframe, where that is, these bolts are going to go. But this is like a really heavy part, and then it's going to butt up against this wall on this side. So that's all going to mount into here, and that's not really a big deal. But what is a big deal is the upper mounts. So this little recessed area right here, that's where the molded frame rail is, under the car. So the lower mounts are going to be somewhere in this area here. And they're going to have to pop up through the floor because they got to be up high enough that I can get the link to run to the top of the housing. So I'm going to have to make a little sheet metal pocket in here. And I'm really thinking that, I don't know if it's going to be much higher than this. So the seat should definitely have no trouble going right back in over the top of it and hiding it all. So my goal is that when you look into this car and you look into the back seat, all the back seat, the side panels, everything is all going to be back in there, and you're not even going to have any idea that any of this work was done. You're going to think that this thing is mostly stock. So that's the look that I'm going for. I don't want it to, this isn't a race car. I don't want it to look like a race car. There's obviously, you know, no cage in this car. So that's my goal, is to be able to put everything back. The only trouble spots I think I'm going to have is over here with this fender well extending out. This part is going to get rounded. It's not going to be a hard corner there. It's going to have a radius to it, and the seat sits about this high, and I'm hoping that it doesn't interfere too much with the seat bottom. And then the side panel, if I have to make any modifications, I'm hoping that it's down in this area where the seat will come up tight and it'll hide any of the modifications I need to make to those plastics. But that's pretty much where we're at so far. So at least for today, this is where I'm going to stop. Like I said, I'm just going to jump into my computer and show you the CAD models that I've created real quick. And then we're pretty much going to be off until the next time I get out here to work on it. And the next time I work on it, I might be cutting that side out or working on the axle housing. I'm not sure. So we're going to have to stay tuned and come back and check out what I do next. Alright guys, so here we are in CAD, and you can kind of see the design that I came up with. So these are the upper mounts on the axle, the body, and these are the lower mounts. This is essentially what it would look like when it's done. I gotta fab up this tubular crossmember for the upper mounts to mount to, but other than that, that's essentially what it should look like when it's done. And I can put the wheels and tires on this to see how that falls. And then, like I was saying when we were in the car, I scanned the underside of the body. So I can apply that to this, and it kind of shows how things will fit. So let me get rid of the tires. So if we look at how this is under the car, you can kind of see where there is room for things, where there isn't. The floor gets kind of close to the top of the housing, but I think there should be enough space there. Now the scan obviously is far from perfect, but I measured 24 inches between these frame rails underneath the car, and this cross member is modeled to 24 inches, and it fits almost exactly. So I would say that this scan is probably within a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of accuracy. Now on the inside, I don't know how exactly accurate it is, but you can see where these upper brackets come through the body. So that's where I'm going to have to make little pockets in order for the upper bar to be able to get from the body to the housing. But with the body scan there and the wheels and tires, you can kind of see how this is going to be fitting in the car. So hopefully this is kind of how it works out. Hopefully this plan works, and we'll just have to see how it goes and kind of play it as it plays out. Alright guys, so I'm going to wrap this video up. So obviously this is going to be a pretty big project for me, so I am not sure exactly when I'm going to be able to finish this, but hopefully it won't take that long. I'm hoping that I can get through this pretty decently quick. I think once I start getting all the brackets and everything, and I have the actual housing I'm going to use, I'm not using that housing, that's just like a mock-up housing. Once I get the actual housing in there, and I get the brackets ordered, and they're here, and I start actually putting stuff up and welding it into place. I don't think it'll take that long, so we'll see. I guess let me know if you guys have any comments. Thanks for watching.